Hello and welcome to Scratch Basics. I'm Mr. Elliott, and in this lesson we're going to learn how Scratch works. So first of all, let's look up Scratch on Google, and we're going to pick scratch.-mit. This is what Scratch looks like right when you get in here. So I have an account. You might not. Go ahead and create an account. It's free, and it'll let you save your progress. So our first thing we're going to do once we've created our account is we're going to go to Create up here, and this is the basic Scratch menu. On the left side here we have all of our code. This large empty space here, that is where we're going to be putting our code. Over here, this little square with the cat in it, that is actually what our game is going to look like. Down here, this is our sprite menu. So every piece of Scratch is actually called a sprite, and this is where we'll be able to control them. We can change their size or where they are on the screen. This little tiny piece right here, that is the backdrop section, so we'll be able to change our background later on, and that's where we're going to do that. Then up here we have two other little categories right here. We have costumes, and this is how we change the look of our sprites, and we also have sounds. We're going to be adding sounds later. This is where all the sounds are going to be. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to click down here to choose a sprite, and we've got a lot of options here. We don't need to worry about those right now. Let's just click choose a sprite. Scratch gives you a ton of free sprites to choose from to make any game you want. So we are just going to go to the very top and pick the apple. Now over here you see our apple has been created over here in our menu, and we can actually click and drag it to move it around. And once we're clicked on it, you see we have it selected down here in blue. And if I click on my cat and move it around, I will select my cat. So let's make sure we're clicking on our apple, and it's kind of big compared to my cat. So I'm going to go right here where it says size, and here you can put any number you want, but I'm going to put 50, and see my apple is now size 50. So everything is size 100 when you start, and so anything relative to that will change. So it's size 50 right now, so it's smaller. But if I do 150, it'll be larger than it was. So let's go back to 50. And let's keep looking at this menu here. So right here, there's something with an X right here and two arrows. And over here, there's a Y with also two arrows. So that is actually where my apple is on my screen. And here, let me move my cat over here. So if I change these two numbers to 0, 0, you'll see my apple is actually right in the middle of my screen. I'm actually, real fast, I'm going to show you how to delete something. You can just press the trash button, just so that we are focused on our apple. So 0, 0 is the very middle. If I increase this number, so if I make it 50, my apple is going to move to the right. And if I increase this number, let's go 50, it'll go up. So the X controls left and right, and the Y controls up and down. Let's go back to 0. Now, if I make it bigger, we're going to the right. To make it go to the left, we're going to have to make it smaller. What is smaller than 0? We're going to have to use a negative number. So I'm going to go negative 50. You just have to press the minus sign. And now we've gone to the left. Same thing over here. We do negative 50. And there we go. We've gone down. So that is kind of how our computer knows where everything is, and this is a great way to showcase how our code works in Scratch. So over here on the left we have a really big menu here with all these different categories. So these, my little circles here, these are our categories. We have motion, looks, sound, events, control, sensing, operators, variables, and my blocks. We're only going to look at a couple here today, but let's go up to motion. This is how we're going to move our sprites. So let's say I want my apple to go to a random position. So right there, it's super simple. It's just going to go to a random position. But I need to tell my computer when that's going to happen. So we go to events. Now you'll notice all of my event blocks have a bit of a hump on the top here. That is because it's the very top of a piece of code, so nothing can go above that. And if you'll see too, there's a little piece right underneath, and it looks like it's going to fit right in. There you go. So once you bring a piece of code right up to it, it should show a little highlight or like a shadow, and if you let go, it'll connect right to it. And now we have a piece of code. When I press the green flag, or when green flag clicked, go to random position. So our green flag is up here. So let me press that. And there we go. We've moved to a random position. And the green flag is generally used to start our games. So we're going to press the green flag once, and then our game starts, and we can play it, and then it'll end. So maybe I want my apple to move, not when I start my game, but when I press a button. How about when I press space? So I'll just grab when space key pressed, and I'm going to press space right now. There we go. We are moving our apple every time I press space. And this is really cool. This has a little drop-down menu you can see, because there's a little arrow right here. If you click on it, there's every button on your keyboard here. So you can kind of use whatever you like. You can even press any. So now I can press any button and my apple will move. But that's not really a fun game now, is it? So I think what we could do is we can grab when this sprite clicked. So remember, a sprite is anything that's in our game down here. So our apple is a sprite. And so when I click it, I'm going to go to a random position. Let's see. I'm going to click my apple and it will go to a random position. Awesome. Now, let's say I want to get some points, right, when I'm playing my game. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to variables. Variables are super interesting. A variable is actually a word, but it's also a number. So let me show you an example. Well, actually, you guys might know something already. Maybe score, right? Score, if you're playing a game, it's the word score, of course, but it also equates to a number, right? Maybe my score goes up every time I pick up a coin or something. That would be a variable. So let's make a variable called score and make sure it's for all sprites. We're going to press OK. So now we have our score variable. So every time you make a variable in Scratch, it'll show up right at the top here in your game. And so let's change my variable by 1. And I actually don't want to change my variable, right? Because that's already here. I want to change score by 1 every time I click my sprite. So let's see. I'm going to click my apple. And there we go. We have a point. We have 2 points. So now I'm making some points every time I click my apple. It seems like we're starting to get a game here, maybe. Let's keep going, though, because there's no stakes, right? Maybe we could add a timer. So you only have, let's say, 10 seconds to click your apple and get as many points as possible. So let's go ahead and work on something like that. We're going to go up to events, and we're going to use when green flag clicked, because that is going to determine when our game starts. When green flag clicked, maybe, what's a good way to start this? I'm going to go down to sensing, and towards the bottom of sensing here, there's a few pieces of code with a timer. So the timer is actually a really cool feature in Scratch. If I click the button right next to the timer here, this little check mark, you'll see I have a timer counting up over here. And we can actually use that timer to start and stop our game. So when we press the green flag, we're going to reset the timer. And so let's test that out right now. I'm going to press, so our timer goes back to 0. And maybe we have, let's say, 5 seconds to click our apple and make as many points as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to control, and we're going to take an if-then block. Now the if-then block is super important, because the if-then block lets us choose something to happen when something else happens. And you're going to see this block very often if you make more games. So let's see. How about if our timer, right? If our timer, bring that over here, is equal to something, right? If our timer is maybe if we reach 10 seconds or 5 seconds, like we said earlier. So we're going to grab one of these over here in my operator section. I'm actually going to take this one right here. So this is a greater than. So what we can do is we can put timer inside of the first circle. And so if our timer is greater than, we don't want to do 50 though, we want to do 5. If our timer is greater than 5, so that means if our game has gone on for 5 seconds, then we do something else. So here we need to put this piece inside of the if, and you'll notice when I take my green piece, I need to make sure that the end here fits right in so that my if then is glowing. Do you see how it glows? See, if I bring it on the other side, there's no glowing, nothing's gonna happen. So let's make sure it's glowing, then we can let go, and we'll connect it right up. So if my timer is greater than 5, then what do I want to happen? I, of course, want the game to end. And we're gonna go over to control, and there's a block here called stop all. Now I like using this to stop my games, but it might not work for you, or sorry, it might not work for other games. So we do need to make sure we're picking the right block for the right game. But I think this is perfect, so we're gonna stop all, and we're gonna put that right here. So now, when I press my green flag, I'm gonna reset my timer back to 0. If my timer is greater than 5, then I'm gonna stop everything. And there's actually one more thing we need to do, and I'm gonna show you that after we test though, because I want to show you why we might need to do something. So let's press play. Oh, actually there's even another thing. Notice how my score is 10 even though I just pressed play? We need to make sure that we reset our score. So I'm gonna go to set my score to 0 when I press my green flag. And this will make it so that my score goes back down every time I press play. There we go, I'm at 0. I'm gonna click as many times as I can before 5 seconds. Oh, and I'm sure you'll notice we've reached 5 seconds, but I can still click and everything still works. So something is wrong. Now, there's actually a couple things wrong, but that's what's important about testing our game while we're building it. So we're actually going to grab a forever. The forever block is pretty important because it tells the computer that you need to be doing something forever, doing something all the time. And what we need to be doing all the time is checking to see if our timer is greater than 5. See, because when I press my green flag, what's going to happen is I'm going to set my score to 0, I'm going to reset my timer, and then I'm going to check to see if my timer is greater than 5. And that's it. It'll go right through, and then nothing else will happen. So I need to make sure I'm putting my forever in here to check everything. And if you mess up with your placement of your code, let's say I accidentally put my forever up here. Oops, I need to take everything out, and you kind of need to break everything apart. If I take something below, like if I grab this one up here, it's going to take everything under it. I need to grab my bottom one, split everything up, and I can put everything back together. My forever can come in right here. There we go. So now let's press play, and I'm going to click, click, click until we reach 5 seconds. And so now everything did stop, but we still need to add something else. So what we need to add is we need to make sure that our apple disappears, because this piece of code right here is working by itself, and this one is also working by itself. So the best way to do this is to maybe I'm going to hide my apple as well. So right here we'll hide. And since we're hiding, we always need to make sure that we are going to be showing when we start. Because remember, let's say I don't do that. Let's say I do this. So let's click, click, click till 5 seconds, and then you'll see, oh, my apple's gone. I had 7 points. Awesome. But now if I press play again, there's no apple. So we do need to make sure to put a show at the start. So now I have a simple little game. I have 5 seconds to click my apple before it disappears, and that's my score. But that's it, right? Let's add a couple things that might make this game a little more fun. So what could be something cool? Maybe I add a backdrop, right? So let's go over to backdrops, and it's going to be pretty similar to how we added our new sprite. We're going to click the backdrop button, And look at this, Scratch has given us a nice amount of backdrops to choose from. And I think I'm going to pick something that's easy to look at. Maybe the light backdrop. That's kind of fun. I think I like it. What else could we do? Maybe our apple changes colors every time we click it. So we're gonna go to looks over here and let's see. Change color effect by 25. So let's see. Now let's think, where do we click our apple, right? Let's look at our code. It's gonna be when this sprite is clicked. So this right here is where I'm clicking my apple. So I'm gonna make sure to put that right there. And now let's see, every time I click my apple, it changes colors a little bit. That is super fun. Is there anything else that I could do that could be super cool? Well, of course, I could add some sounds, right? Let's see. Let's go to sounds. So the apple comes with a chomp sound. Let's play it. It's pretty fun. Maybe I'm eating the apple. Maybe that's what my game is. But we can always add a new sound. So down here, just like the sprite menu and the background menu, I have a lot of sounds to choose from. And if you want to see what the sound is going to be, you just need to put your mouse right on top of it. Okay. A lot of cool ones here. I think I like, you know what, I see one down here that says bite. I like that. Let's pick the bite sound. So now I have chomp and bite in my game. And what I can do is I can go over to sound and I can just play sound bite. And I can choose, I can do bite or chomp. So let's see. Now every time I click my apple, I'm chomping it. That is super fun. So slowly we're adding cool new things that make our game more interesting. And here's actually a fun one. We can actually change our pitch effect by 10. So now every time I bite my apple, my pitch will change. Let's hear it. Isn't that fun? It goes up, 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 and up. But make sure right here, so now my pitch, I don't know what number it is now, but I think I clicked the apple maybe 7 times. So we need to make sure we reset our pitch effect back to 100 whenever we press the green flag. Oh, sorry, 100 might be a little too much. Let's go back down to 0. There we go. Nice. And just like the pitch, we should probably also change the color back to what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to set color effect to 0. That way I start with a red apple. And you know what? Something interesting. When I press play, my apple is kind of in a weird spot. I would like for it to start in the very center. And now if you remember from earlier, the very center, so where our apple is, if you pay attention to these numbers down here, our apple changes depending on those numbers, right? That's where it is on our screen. So if we go over to motion, we can use go to X, Y, and that will actually bring our apple somewhere. Let's do 0, 0, and that of course will bring our apple to the very center of our screen every time we press the green flag. So let's go ahead and see. Very nice. So I'm going to press the stop sign here. Now, one thing that I don't really like about my game is that the timer seems to just be, it's a little distracting for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, over here, now I know that it works, right? Because if my timer is greater than 5, then everything stops. I'm just going to remove it. So that could pose a couple problems though, right? Because the players won't know how long they have to eat their apple. What is a way that we could solve this? Now let's see. I can actually make my apple say something. So I'm going to have my apple say the timer when I press the green flag. And so now, if you'll notice, so it says how much time there is, but see, it only says it once. I need to make sure that it says it forever. So now my apple is going to let me know how much time I have left. And then once it hits 5, it's gone. And that's amazing. I love that. I think our game is complete. So let's see. 7. I keep getting 7. Maybe 5 is too little time, right? I can do so many things now that my game is complete. I can make it 10 seconds. I could make the apple give me 2 score every time. Maybe the apple moves around, right? So let's see if we can add a bit of code to make our apple move around. So let's see what's a fun thing to do right here. Move 10 steps. If I bring this out, and I can just click on, this is an interesting thing you can do in Scratch. You can actually take these pieces of code and click on them from here. So see if I click on this one, it'll do whatever it says. So I can click on turn 15 degrees. See how my apple is turning? So I can actually test out all these pieces of code while or before I use them. Now I've changed my direction to 180. I want to make sure that I go back to 90. And you can just change the number down here to 90. And now move 10 steps is going to make my apple move 10 steps, of course. So it's going to move in that direction. I like it. It's awesome. And let's bring it down into the forever. That way my apple is moving around. Maybe it's a little harder to click, right? So let's see. Oh, it's stuck. So it's going to be stuck on the wall now. And I don't really like that, right? I kind of want it to bounce. And that's no problem. We have a piece of code over here in motion that says if on edge, bounce. And we're just going to bring that back in here into the forever. That way it's always going to be checking. Remember, if it's in my forever, my code is always going to be checking for this type of stuff. So I'm moving 10 steps, and if I'm on the edge, I will bounce. So let's go ahead and try it out. Nice. But my apple is turning upside down. Now we don't want that. So to fix that our apple turns upside down or not, we can actually go over here to direction. If we click on direction, we've got a couple options here. We're going to click the one in the middle. And that means that we can only rotate from left to right. So there will be no upside down apple here. So let's go ahead and try it out. Awesome. And let's see what's really hard to click. Oh, there we go. So I think it might be too hard. I'm going to change this from 10 to maybe 2. I think that'll be a little easier. Now, if it's still too hard for you, you don't need to make it move at all. You can make it move even slower, maybe even 1. I'm just showcasing the types of things you could do with motion. And let's see, it's only going left to right now, right? So let's make it move a little more differently, right? So let's use turn 15 degrees. And let's go ahead and put that, let's see, if we put that right here at the start, it's going to turn a little bit. So now it's going kind of down here. That's kind of fun. Let's see what happens if we put this in our forever. Now it's kind of making a little circle. That's pretty cool. Couple cool options here, but what I think could be the most fun is pick random. Now you're going to be seeing pick random pretty often in Scratch, and it's actually super fun. You can choose a random number between 2 numbers. So we're actually going to pick 0 to, I think, 180. And that is going to be relative to these numbers right here. See how this is 0 up here, and down here is 180. So if I put that into turn 15 degrees, now my apple is going to turn a random direction, and it'll go in a random direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab it, and I'm thinking we should put it over here. That way, every time I click it, it'll go in a random direction. So let's see, now we're going down. Now we're going up. We're going up again. We're going down. Now we're going this way, kind of up and to the left. So now every time I click it, we're going to pick a new fun direction to move. And you know what? now that I've been playing my game for a little bit of time and I'm working on it, I think 50 is too small for my apple. I'm going to go up to 75. And I can't see it right now because it's not, it's been hidden, right? I can actually click these little eyeballs over here, go right here, and I can see my apple. I think that's a great size. So I think I'm done with this game. I really like it. So up here, let's rename it. We're gonna put, I like to name my things with my name, so I'm gonna say Mr. Elliott, and let's call this one Apple Click. Very nice. And you might see a Save Now button up here. Let's press that. And if you don't see the Save Now button, if you just go over here to File, you should have a Save Now right here. And we can just click that. When you're using Scratch, your project should be saved pretty often. So just make sure you're naming it and everything should be great. So now you can actually over here, you can full screen right here with this button. So let's full screen. And now we can just play our game. "16." Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me on this lesson. This was the basics of Scratch, and I hope to see you again in a future lesson.